So it's time to go car shopping. And you've taken the time to browse online, figure out the style you want, the price range you want to stay within, and if you think the next step is to go to the dealership to find that car, you're making a huge mistake. And I'll tell you why in this video. Welcome back to the channel. Now let's talk about why going to the dealership is not the next step you want to make after you've decided how much you want to spend and what kind of vehicle you want to buy. Your next step, without a doubt, should be to take a trip to your local credit union or bank. I had to learn the hard way that when you go to a dealership and you have minimal information, not only are you at the mercy of that dealership, but you could be in for a potentially long day, not just waiting a couple of hours, but sometimes 6 to 8 hours, or maybe even having to come back a second day just to get a deal done. And that totally is not worth it. So let's talk about the number one benefit of going to the credit union first, which is you'll do the exact opposite of what you do at the dealership, which is find a car, get excited about a car, and then have to wait for the approval process. When you go to your credit union first, what'll happen is you'll start the pre-approval process, go over your credit information, explain some of what may hold you back, what has held you back with your credit. And then once that part is taken care of, the discussion of what your APR is and what the monthly term will be for the loan that you're looking for. Now, of course, the better the credit, the faster that approval comes. But even with someone that has challenging credit, the big difference in going to the credit union instead of the dealership is you can discuss your information, leave without hassle, and just wait for the phone call. So now that you know that you're approved, what else is it that the credit union or bank can help you out with? Well, there's something called NADA values. And this is something that banks and dealerships use to gauge the value of the car that you plan on purchasing. And what I decided to do was go ahead and put something on the screen to show you exactly what it is and how it works and how you can use this information to your benefit when you go to the dealership to purchase that car. Now, if you're not familiar with what the NADA values are, or if you just want more of a complete breakdown, I've created a separate video going over that information. For this video, I'm going to go ahead and go straight into what we want to see, which is the value for the two vehicles that I consider purchasing, as well as the information that I received on what kind of value I should expect for the car that I was potentially trading in. Let's go ahead and start with the Ford Escape, which is the first vehicle that I was considering. Now, as you can see, this report was pulled in April of 2018, so all of this information was relevant as of that time. So let's go ahead and focus on the last two categories of this report, which is the clean loan and clean retail. Let's go ahead and talk about the clean loan information. For this vehicle, it's saying the base value is $15,000, and when you adjust in the mileage, we're going to lose $3,700. And as you can see, this vehicle has almost 100,000 miles, 98,835 to be exact. And after that mileage adjustment, that leaves us with an adjusted value of $11,300. Now, according to the NADA glossary, the definition of a clean loan is the expected dollar amount a bank would be willing to approve for that particular vehicle. Now let's go ahead and take a look at that clean retail. That number suggests that the base value is $18,150. Again, subtracting that $3,700 for an adjusted value of $14,450. Now, the definition of a clean retail is basically, to keep it simple, to say what the vehicle's value is. So in this case, the value of this vehicle is $14,450. Now let's take note at the information that's written at the bottom of this page. We have a trade-in value of $1,700 and a purchase price of $12,106.20. Now, before I talk about two ways that this information could be manipulated by the dealership and you could potentially be out of thousands of dollars, let's take a look at the other vehicle that I was considering, and let's go over those numbers and compare it all at the same time. So let's take a look at this 2016 Nissan Rogue. The clean loan information shows a base value of $16,400, mileage adjustment of $3,400.50, and an adjusted value of $12,950. Clean retail information shows that base value at $21,100, same number for mileage adjustment, which is $3,450, and a final adjusted value of $17,650. Now, let's take a look at the trade-in value this dealership was going to give, which was basically half of the other one, $850, and a total purchase price for this vehicle of $15,091.95. So now we have two trade-in numbers that are definitely not even close. So how do you know exactly what you should be getting for that trade-in? Well, let's take a look at this information I received from the credit union. It's the NADA values for my 2005 Buick LaCrosse. Now this is going to be extremely helpful for you because it'll give you a really good idea of what your vehicle's value is and if it's worth trading in. So let's go ahead and look at these numbers. Our trade-in section is broken down to three categories, which are rough, average, and clean. And let's jump ahead and look over to the adjusted value and see that those same numbers for rough are $1,275, average $2,000, and clean $2,575. Now, as you can see, I would definitely say my Buick falls into the category of clean, which means the trade-in offers I received, those numbers were fairly low, and I would be leaving money on the table if I was to accept either offer. So let's go ahead and go back to the 2016 Ford Escape and look over that deal. This 2016 Ford Escape was the SE EcoBoost model, so it was closer to standard equipment, and the really only special features that it had was the backup camera and touchscreen. Everything else was closer to base. Looking at that $1,700 trade-in, part of that is because I have done business with this dealership before, so there's that customer loyalty incentive with that trade-in number. And also, this is a smaller dealership, so this is a car that, if they choose to buy it, they would just resell it on a lot. Now, this by far was the best trade-in offer I received, followed by the $850 and even as low as $700 at one dealership I went to. Now, if you look at it and say, hey, if the worst I'm getting is $700 and the next offer after that is $850 and then it jumps up to $1,700, you have to make that deal. That's a huge mistake, because at the end of the day, if you choose to sell your car yourself, even though it's a little bit more time and potentially a little bit more hassle, you can make a lot more money when you sell your car yourself. And that is what I've done for the last few vehicles that I've sold, and I've came out a lot better. Now, looking back at that 2016 Nissan Rogue, this vehicle is the SL model, which means it's fully equipped, leather seats, sunroof, heated seats, anything that this car had to offer. It's definitely in this package. Now, to me, the Rogue is definitely the better vehicle. But do you look at it and say, with this trade-in value of $850, do you start to wonder if you go with what you think is the better deal, which is, in this case, the Escape, because more trade-in value, cheaper vehicle, or do you look at it and say the Rogue has more to offer and you suck up the difference you'll lose with your trade-in, which is roughly $850. Now, for me, this was a no-brainer. I went with the Rogue with no hesitation. However, the big key for me was I didn't do a trade-in. I decided to sell the car myself. Now, let's go ahead and go back to those values on that 2005 Buick LaCrosse, and let's talk about what I actually sold the car for. Even with the high mileage, I knew I would be crazy if I sold this car for less than $2,000. So what I decided to do was go ahead and list it on Craigslist, and I made a video on YouTube, did a very detailed listing on Craigslist, and I listed it for $2,500. Now, I listed this car at 10 o'clock at night, and by 8 a.m. the next morning, I had a buyer, and I sold the car for $2,500, which is $800 more than my highest offer, and that would be $1,800 more than my lowest offer. So as you can see, it's definitely smart to weigh in all your options. Don't rush to make a deal. And as you can see, in this case, I beat the dealership's deal or offer, I'll say, by making my own separate deal and transaction by selling the car myself. Now, even though it's not really you versus the dealership, it should be more of a feeling of a partnership. I would say it's still good knowing it's a numbers game and you came out on the winning side. So with that being said, let's go ahead and talk about the Rogue, since that is the vehicle that I chose. And let's look at the second way that you would have to watch out for the numbers and how the dealership can put you in a situation that you don't necessarily need to be in. Now, this next round versus the dealership is pretty tricky because even when you lose, it still works in your favor. But let's go ahead and talk about the down payment. Let's remember the clean loan adjusted value is $12,950. Now, looking at what they're selling the vehicle for, they were selling it for $14,750. So if you do the math and subtract that $12,950, that's a difference of $1,800. Now the dealership can easily say, hey, the bank is willing to approve you for this $12,950, but because we're selling the vehicle for this amount, which is the $14,750, we're going to need a down payment of $1,800. And at this point, you're probably trying to negotiate and say, hey, well, can you come down on the price some? And they'll hit you with the sticker price number and say, hey, you know, this truck was originally $15,875. So we've already come down a significant amount and we can't go any lower. So now that puts you in a space where if you had the money, fine, you pay the down payment. But if you didn't have it, or you didn't have the total amount, now the negotiation process drags on, and the dealership at the end of the day probably already had the approval for the full $14,700. But because of the numbers games, it was in their benefit to see if they can go ahead and get the down payment out of you and play it that route. Now, if at the end of the day, you end up driving off the lot with that vehicle, the battle of the numbers as far as the down payment, the only thing you really lost was time. Because even if you did pay the $1,800, what really happens is you have more equity in the vehicle and a potentially lower monthly payment. Now, losing round two definitely doesn't hurt as much as losing round one. But if you happen to win both rounds with the dealership, that means you have a total in savings of over $3,400 when you come in with the knowledge of what you need to do to purchase your next vehicle. All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up. Now, if you thought this information was helpful, definitely go ahead and give this video a thumbs up and look forward to more content like this, because I feel like I definitely have a nice amount of experience dealing with the dealerships and the credit unions, and that information is definitely something that I feel like I should pass on. So make sure, if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to this channel, and I'll go ahead and catch you in the next one. Peace.